Hello and welcome everyone to Season 2 of Soul and Science, where psychology meets ancient wisdom. Our theme this month for Season 2 is From Victim to Victor, the podcast where we explore the transformative journey of healing and personal empowerment. Through inspiring stories, insights, and practical tools, we'll guide you from a place of victimhood to victory, from unconscious patterns to conscious, empowered living. Whether you're navigating trauma, striving for personal growth, or simply looking for a deeper understanding of how to reclaim your power, this will give you an insight and a few tools to help you on that journey. Join me, Nyana, a psychotherapist, and Ardaas, a spiritual teacher, as we dive deeper into the connection of mind, body, soul, and its incredible ability to heal and rise and elevate. While this may not be a therapy session, and we invite you to seek professional advice where needed, this may allow you to get closer to understanding where you have been stuck in the past and how you can be reborn to be victorious. Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Season 2 of Soul and Science, where psychology meets ancient wisdom. We are once again here with Nyana, me, a psychologist, and with Ardaas ji, our spiritual teacher and our guide in ancient wisdom and yogic sciences. Thank you for being with us as always, Ardaas ji. In today's episode 5 of Season 2, we're going to be talking about reclaiming safety, creating a foundation for healing. So really we're here looking forward from what is trauma to the journey forward, which is the present moment of how do we heal, and what is the first and the most important foundation of healing. And when we were talking about it, naturally in psychology we talk about safety. And this is something that we started talking about last time when we talked about needs. So Ardaas ji, do you have any thoughts on safety, and if you want to connect it to a lot of what we talked about last time, which was meeting those needs and recognizing that there is a foundation for safety and security as a stepping stone to healing.
Well, hello everyone, and hello Nyana. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you everyone for tuning in to us. We know there's plenty of podcasts in the world, and there's plenty of programs to listen and plenty of things to do and dedicate your valuable time in, and you chose to listen to us, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that today. Start with that. Thank you for tuning in with us. So today is about safety. So as Nina was saying, we are now changing the focus into healing. So we are moving forward now. So let me connect a little bit of where we came from, so that we got to this healing now. And remember the last episode we were talking about the unholy alliance between thoughts and emotions. And one of the things we have been talking the other previous episodes as well is how, in a way, trauma has been recorded because it's good for the survival of the species. So if we have a bad experience, we want to remember so that we don't go there. Yeah, right. So if it's a place that it's dangerous, we want to remember not to go there. If we had a bad experience with somebody, we want to avoid that person. If it's with a spider, we want to avoid spiders. In a way, it's kind of to protect ourselves. And so there is somehow we had some trauma, something happened. It got stored within our memory and within our emotions and within our bodies, the body, the emotions, the mind, the spirit, all connected. And now we have this thing there that is sometimes dormant, and sometimes it wakes up and it causes all sorts of things to pop up in our life. Like maybe it sabotages us when we want to get to a better place, and when we feel that there's an opportunity opening up and we feel we cannot do that because I'm not good enough, or I'm not prepared, or who is going to want me to do that, whatever. We have all these things, all these narratives and these thoughts that are disturbing the perception of truth of what actually happens through the lens of that trauma, but we don't really notice because we have gotten used to that thing being there. And so normally it's asleep, sometimes it pops up, we don't even notice, and then we have these reactions and we continue surviving, let's say, like that, right? So now we want to change this from survival to thriving, no? From survive to thrive, and we want to heal that aspect within ourselves. And one of the things is, in order to change anything within us, that means that we are going to go and expose ourselves to an unknown part of us, something unknown. And by default, when we are exposed to the unknown because it's not familiar, that is going to activate some of the most primitive parts of our brain that are in charge of survival. This is what we have been talking in the last episode. I'm just trying to recapitulate a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
And so that is going to trigger that part in our brain that is focused on our survival because it's an unknown place. We have to be careful, and that may trigger the trauma. So it's kind of like a snake biting its own tail, because to heal whatever thing we have inside, whatever situation we have inside, we need to expose ourselves to the unknown. And by exposing ourselves to the unknown, that can trigger the trauma itself, because of how our mechanism for defense and works. So, okay, given all this introduction, we want to be able to face this unknown in a safe way. We want to feel safe, and safety is the key word, because if we feel safe, there's not going to be a triggering of this mechanism that is linked to the trauma, because trauma is linked to this survival. So if we feel safe, then we can approach something new, something unexpected, something different, something unknown. And from the spiritual perspective, now let me just bring a little bit of the spirit as well, because we are all, spiritual beings having this human experience. If we want to do some path towards connecting to this spiritual part of us, that spiritual connection and the divine as well, you could say even God, if you want to talk about God in that way, that is also unknown. Who is God? What is God? God is unknown. He's probably the greatest unknown in the universe. So if you want to go and meet God, that's going to be the meeting with the unknown. If you want to meet the divine part within you, that's an unknown part within us. Where is our soul? What is our soul? Where is it? I cannot touch it. I cannot grasp it. And so whatever mechanisms we have inside that are scared of meeting the unknown, they are going to trigger as well. So just for the sole purpose of having a spiritual alignment in this existence, in this life, to align ourselves with something spiritual, that is already going to require a meeting of the unknown, and therefore hopefully feeling safe enough to do that. Because if we don't feel safe, that's going to trigger the trauma, and then we're going to be sabotaging ourselves. So that's how we get to the point of safety. Is that a good introduction, Nyana?
That's a brilliant introduction and very well uh, taken from the previous conversations that we have had around trauma and how trauma leads to this experience in general of being unsafe. And so I was looking up at the definition of safety, and it was the, not feeling threatened or recognizing that I'm okay. And when we're not able to feel that, in our being, in our body, in our mind, in our existence, that leads to a lot of disruption of the way we interact with the world. And then in order to interact with the world, we create certain mechanisms. We talked about defenses last time, coping strategies in order to interact with the world. And so from what you're saying is that the safety comes from the feeling of being of known versus unknown. And yet in feeling safe, we have to venture into the unknown to come back into the understanding of what is known. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, it would be fair, and I like the way you phrased it, because there's another layer of that, which is the being known concept. What about us being known? Let me put an example. A kid who is bullied in school, he's bullied because he's different. And the moment that he is different, well, there's a number of reasons why he can be bullied, yeah, but one of the things is that he's a different kid. Maybe he's more sensitive, more quiet, more inside, more internal, more shy. And then they notice some weakness. And so some people, they need to feel good about themselves by exploiting others to feel powerful because they don't know how to feel it in another way. So they go and they abuse this kid in whichever form, maybe verbal abuse or even physical abuse. And now the kid has a trauma. Okay, so this is, I'm just setting up an example of trauma. Now that kid felt that he was being bullied because he was different, and being different means to be known. Like this is like the zebras. The pack of zebras, and when one zebra gets out of the pack, that's the one that is eaten by the lions. And so there is the survival mechanism within us is telling us, don't get out of the pack, just be equal like everybody else. And so it's not just about the known and the unknown outside of us, but also when we are known or unknown. So for example, going back to what I was saying before, let's say an opportunity arises in your job in which you can take a position of leadership, and it's going to come with an immense career advancement and money and a lot of things that could be really nice. But because you're going to take a position of leadership, that means you're going to be known and you're going to be seen. And that is going to trigger those, if you were that kid that were abused when you were little, or you were, you had a traumatic experience by the bullying, then you are not going to want to be seen and be known. So you want to go into the background and, merge with the wall. And so you are not going to take that position. And that's how we sabotage ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important aspect because most of us, while we may be thinking that we're afraid of the outside, it's because we haven't felt that safety within. And that safety within is the exploration of the internal landscape that is unknown to us. And so, safety, to break it down, is of different levels. As physical safety, am I safe? Am I feeling safe within? Am I safe in this environment? There is a natural form of, is there a lion or tiger around here that's going to eat me up? So that's physical safety. Then there's emotional safety. Are my emotions welcome? Am I able to emote here? Can I freely express, again, not within the containment that we have talked about in the past, but okay, is there room for me to even feel? Are my feelings welcome here? Is there any form of block or restriction to me feeling it's not safe to feel? And then there's psychological safety. Is there a threat around? And the threat is not necessarily of a tiger, but a psychological threat. Am I being threatened? Am I being manipulated? Is there something like that that's happening? And then there is your spiritual safety. Am I being allowed to believe in what I want to believe in? Whether that's God, whether that's, nature, whatever my religious or spiritual belief may be. And is that all available to me to feel like all of me and all parts of my expressive state is welcome here, and that I can actually be who I'm meant to be or who I am in my natural state? And that when that is not available, starting when you're young, whether you're being bullied because there you're not being welcomed for who you are, you're not being accepted, validated and welcomed for who you are, for whatever reason, I may perceive your difference to be a weakness, for example, then that expression of safety gets affected. And trauma sets in that says it's not okay to be me. I'm not safe if I'm me. It's not safe if I say, hey, what you're saying is hurting me. There may be more fun and ridicule made of me, and so I cannot express that what you're doing is harmful to me. So I'm not safe, there is harm around me. And that is the onset of a form of trauma that begins to set into an individual that then says, I am not safe here. And that begins another journey of Not what we have talked in the beginning, it's not just what happened to you, but what happens inside of you when that event of someone bullying you or someone making fun of you happens, and you internalize that who I am is not okay. And then it's not then just about physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, it's also of my psyche, but a safety of my existence, that it's not safe to be me. Then what do I do?
Wow, yeah, and I'm seeing another layer as well,
Mm.
even deeper, when this lack of safety outside generates a lack of safety feeling, so feeling unsafe with myself.
Yes.
So, for example, the kid who is bullied, or you know, they have a difficulty with, maybe he was abused, maybe in the family, and then they grow angry at what happened to them. Now, as an adult, they are angry adults,
Mm-hmm.
and they may feel sometimes they cannot control that anger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I am not in a safe space, it's not that I am not safe because of what's outside, it's that I am not safe to others. So the moment that the anger comes and you feel like you are a danger to your partner, to your kids, to the people around you, and if you haven't learned how to contain and express and work with those emotions, then what do you do with that? So you not only it's not only that you are in stress because you might be in an unsafe place, but you are the element that is not safe. Then what do you do? There's no escape. If it's like a place that there is a danger, I can avoid it. But if it's me who is the danger, is like, even if we take it to the psychological level as well, from the emotions, my thoughts are not safe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust my own mind. Not,
Exactly.
you know, I'm not sure anybody should trust their own mind, but you know, when sometimes the mind goes really crazy and can say really absurd things that could be actually dangerous. So I'm not safe, not because of the environment, not because I am perceiving some danger in the environment that maybe is not there, but because even my own thoughts are unsafe. Now that's like even a deeper layer. I can imagine this is like the deepest that you can go when you self-identify yourself. No, you self-identify with the element of danger. You are the one who is creating a danger to yourself and to others.
And to others. And that's really important to beautifully brought up and put, because one is I'm a danger, but the other is I'm a problem, I'm a troublemaker, it's my fault, everything is happening because of me. And this by design, when children are young, they do not understand that something outside of me could be the problem. Because we're egocentric in ego developmental stages, we make it about us.
Yeah.
And so my sense of self itself is fragmented. And then if there's something wrong with me, or there's something bad in me, or I am dangerous, or I'm a troublemaker, or sometimes unknowingly, see, this happened because of you. I've seen that a lot with kids who are born after a parent, may die in childbirth, for example, right? That they carry this burden, and then I live with this fact that I'm dangerous, and my whole psyche, my whole being, my whole presence of living in this body becomes dangerous. And so then we see a lot of disassociation and parts of an individual that may get disassociated. And the whole journey of safety is that I have started to reject my own self. I begin to believe that I am self is wrong.
Mm.
And so, how do I live in this body? How do I live with myself? That's very, very. And then the mind starts telling you the things that you want to believe, because we have an inner critic and we have a judge, all of this that is part of the psyche that will tell you exactly what you believe. It's there because somewhere deep in the unconscious, that's the belief we created. And so, trauma is not only what happened outside, but it's what's happening within us in this moment, that I am no longer safe. And I'm now coping with being this danger.
Yeah. It's like you feel like you jump from being the victim to being the perpetrator. Now
Exactly.
you took the other identity now.
Exactly. And then it's like I'm always playing between these two polarities, these two identities, and I'm never able to get out of it. And then I'm recreating the story and the cycle, and that's where we get stuck in trauma. Um, and that's really then about where healing begins, is not just creating safety outside for the individual, but creating a safe relationship within, because there is no trust then where do I go? If I
Yeah.
can't trust myself, I can't trust my thoughts, I can't trust this anger in me that I have any control over it, or I can't trust the distorted identity I have created about myself, then there is no hope for me. And that can become a very very dangerous space for people um, who are actually in the process of life, and that then creating safety becomes a very very important part of the journey, which is where I think spiritualism really helped, which is to have and understand the aspect of spiritual beings having a human experience, which is what you said about before. But just going a little bit deeper than that is, okay, now I have all these beliefs about myself and this identity. If that is how I see myself, what happens to me inside the body? There is this terror of who I am. I'm living in a constant state of terror of myself, of what I believe about myself. There is hypervigilance, anxiety, distrust. That becomes my internal landscape. That is the chronic landscape I'm living with in constantly, either with guilt and shame, and we've talked about, and we can talk about it a little bit more in more detail here today, and what that does to the nervous system then. Then I'm always in activated sympathetic system trying to run away from myself, and that's when we are coping with addictions and using other forms
Yeah.
of substances, because
Yeah.
I can't live in this body that is always rejecting itself, it's scared of itself, it believes the things that it believes about itself. And how do you then get into this body, into parasympathetic, into a state of healing, into a container that says, I am not all of these things. I can get out of survival mode, because I'm merely surviving if I'm always looking at myself as a form of danger and harm.
Right. Well, I think the problem is quite clearly identified now. It's quite
Mm-hmm.
clear. So let's start moving towards that safety and towards the healing. I think it's time to start turning it around and identify how we can then come out of that hole. Yeah. So you were just talking about the safety in the body
Mm-hmm.
and the effect that it has on the body. And I was like considering, why are yoga postures so effective?
Mm.
And then I had a little realization as you were talking, because sometimes we cannot feel safe with our own thoughts because we feel we are not in control of those thoughts. And by the way, this all starts with this identification that we either identify with the victim or the perpetrator, and that all that is associated to the identification we have. And first of all, just to say, whoever is listening, you can change that. Okay,
Mm.
who do you identify with? That's not the true I. That's not the true me. That's not who I truly am. That's just an identity. That's just something that I've created to survive. That's fine. That's what I had to go through. That's the life I had to, and now I can change that. So just to think, I am an angry person, and so that's a way of giving yourself an excuse not to do anything about it and just to say, well, I cannot change it, it's my nature. Well, actually, there's plenty that we can do. But I understand that when we are in that situation, we feel, I cannot control my own thoughts, or I cannot control this anger, or whatever emotion is coming up. And so this feeling of powerlessness is also not going to help you to to start this process of healing. Because if I'm not in control, so if I'm not in control, what can I do, right? So coming back to the physical body, which is the most material of things.
Can I just say one thing
Yeah.
here before? There was a time when the person may not have been in control and powerless. And then we developed a belief, or a part developed that belief. And one of the important aspects of healing is to relook at that. So it may have been true at one point of time, but in the present self, it may not necessarily be true.
Yeah.
However, and I'm just saying this as a caveat, that if you are living in an abusive relationship, that may still be true.
Yeah, to a certain
The
extent.
perception of it may still be true.
Yeah, and you can also do things to change that or to leave. Yeah. So there is things, well, maybe you don't feel you have the courage or the energy or the power or whatever to do those steps. But yeah, indeed. So that was true at the beginning, and then we may be in a situation where it's not true anymore, but we still think that we are powerless and we are not in control. So why I think that the yoga postures work so well is because every time you go and you do your routine, let's say the sun salutations, which are very popular, most people know what the sun salutations are. If anybody has tried yoga, they know what the sun salutations are. Let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to do a sun salutation in the morning, and when you do that, you are controlling your own body and your body is responding, and that's already like, that's, it may sound silly what I'm saying, but that doesn't happen with the mind necessarily automatically. You may say to the mind, please calm down, don't think bad things anymore, and the mind is just keeps on going. If we haven't trained ourselves to have a hold on the mind, then the mind does whatever it wants. Same with emotions. You can try to say, come on, don't be angry. But if you are angry, it's difficult to stop that if you don't know how to do it. So it's different with the body. If I say, move the hand moves. So by controlling the physical body and by doing these movements, there's actually two immediate real benefits. One is you are in control of your own body and you are getting back to the feeling of my body is safe because I can move it when I want to move it, and it does move. So that's already pretty nice, and nice feeling, first of all. Apart from the second thing is all the good things that these movements are going to be doing for you, because since through the trauma there was some separation and imbalance between the connection of body, mind, and spirit, body, emotions, mind, and spirit, all these got disconnected and imbalanced. By doing postures and by breathing and also by the mantras, this is the beginning of realigning yourself. So it's a way of telling yourself, I'm holding my life in my own hands and I'm going to do these sun salutations for myself. And also because you want to improve, you want to be good with yourself, and feeling doing the sun salutations feels good. So this is another subtle message you're giving to your mind. I do things for myself because they feel good, which means I care about myself, which is a very important thing to say. So especially when through some traumas that you may feel like your life has no value or no meaning. So to do something for yourself is like saying, no, it does have a value. I'm going to start valuing myself. I'm going to start loving myself. And one good thing to do is start the day with doing something that my body enjoys. So that's very powerful.
That's really interesting that you said that, because that's so linked later on to, and for what we said earlier, which is meeting our needs and valuing them and knowing that we have value, which trauma, depending on what kind, can take that sense or perception of worthlessness, unworthiness, not being good enough, becomes the identity, and we get attached to that identity, and that is who we believe we are. And when we do that, then that kind of fear gets locked in the body. And that can become either in a flight fight or a freeze response. And then we get sometimes stuck. And a lot of people are not able to move, they're not able to reach their goals, they procrastinate. And all of these are trauma responses. I may want to go someplace, but my body won't go with me, and that's a trauma response. it's your body has gone into shutdown, or it becomes really overwhelmed and you're not able to, and then we see panic attacks and anxiety and all of those things. Because if I feel that way about myself, then going out into the world and facing the world can be very anxiety riding. And so people have social anxiety and other forms of phobias and things like that that we're seeing. And how important it is to recognize that our mind can also become bullies. If you've been bullied, our mind can start bullying us, and then if you're being bullied by the mind, then the body goes into more shutdown, because our body responds a lot to what we are hearing ourselves say to ourselves. So how we speak to ourselves and how we treat ourselves becomes very, very important. But for that, we have to be conscious of the thoughts. Most of us are not conscious of our thoughts. We're not able to sit still enough and listen to those thoughts, and then we think those thoughts are real. And that's a real big
Maybe, maybe because they are very disturbing sometimes.
Absolutely, and therefore
So,
is very, very difficult. And we are always on the go, we're always on the move, but more unconsciously and automatically rather than conscious movement, which can be very painful and scary for a lot of people. Uh, because there's a disconnect or an incongruence that happens between the mind and the body. And that is the source of trauma, and the core of trauma is the disconnection between mind, body, and our intuition and our gut. And so the mind is thinking something, the body is doing something else, and your intuition has said something completely else, and we are not aligned. And that healing is bringing in back that alignment. Safety is coming back into the body and having the ability to recognize that, okay, my thoughts, I can ask them, I can control my thoughts, and I can listen to my intuition. And that whole journey requires us to move the body in very conscious ways, by commanding the body to move, because otherwise the body is on its own journey, the mind is somewhere else, and there's nobody speaking to each other. And that's why I think yoga becomes so important, because you're consciously asking the body to move in a way that is good for it, that is safe, that is getting us out of the automatic pattern of being distracted and running from one thing to another because we're afraid of our own thoughts or the experience that we are living with within, to slow down and to take control of the body first. And with that, when we're taking control of the body, over time taking control, because I know with yoga there's breath, there's mantra, especially Kundalini yoga, we're getting the mind and body to kind of coordinate and speak to each other. We're coming back into alignment, that which has become completely incongruent and not speaking to each other. Which is why I see a lot of people who are screaming at the top of their lungs and saying, I'm not screaming. And you're like, oh, okay. Because I'm just not present. I'm completely out of my body and disconnected from what is happening in the moment. And so it's just this journey of bringing back that connection, of going back into the body, allowing the body to feel, so that I'm not only in my thoughts all the time, which is also what we talked about last time, right? The emotional numbing and feelings like that. That congruence, that alignment, that safety is one of the biggest foundations of the journey of healing, but also that yoga allows us to do so beautifully in the postures that we do. If I can share one, I still remember the first time I started doing yoga. It was maybe 3 or 4 weeks into it. Suddenly there was a thought that said, oh, this is my body. I can ask it to move the way I want it to move, and it'll listen to me. It was the first time at that time I was 39 or 40 or something like that I felt a sense that this is my body. That just showed me for how many years I lived disconnected and disassociated from it.
and enjoy it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's something that happens often in trauma. You dislike yourself and you dislike your body, you dislike your mind. But by doing these postures, actually anything would help. Ballet, dancing, this would all be an expression of the body. and just asking your body to move in that way and doing it and feeling you're doing it and managing to do the dance that you want to do, that could be also very healing. So those are also ways of healing the body. But it's also like, wow, enjoy that the body is doing what I'm asking it to do. Yeah.
Yeah, because the body in survival mode is either in flight, fight, or freeze, and so it's almost an automatic response that the body goes into. Um, and sometimes I see so many clients that say, I just go into shutdown. I don't know what to do. I want to say something back to this person. I want to respond, but I just go into freeze.
Right.
And
And if they respond, it's more like a reaction. It's not a response. It's an emotional reaction, which from the yogic perspective is going to create more karma and more trouble along the way.
yeah, yeah, but movement, and because I go into, so they're like, but why do I go into freeze? And I'm like, yeah, because it's probably experienced this before and it's dangerous, and the body knows that in a situation like this, it's better to shut down. That's the way it can save you, but it does not know that you are no longer 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 when that happened to you the first time. It's responding to you, and psychology has different mm, modalities in trauma work today, but in somatic work of internal family systems, it says the part no longer knows that it's not 10 or 11. It still thinks you're 10 or 11 because it's still frozen in that place. That trauma, that young part, that young self is still frozen there. And so we really need to able to move, and do movement practices along with therapy in the psychology world to allow the stuck energy, or the stuckness, to start being expressed in a way so that the young part can recognize, oh, Nyana in this case is no longer 12 years old. So I don't need to go in to save her. Today she can respond as a 44-year-old, with consciousness and intention. But that is the work we need to go into the body with somatics and working to move all this repressed emotion out. For many times, for people it could be a scream that got stuck, a howl that got stuck, and movement allows all of that debris to sort of start showing up and to be expressed in a way that is today safe, that may not have been safe then. If there was, I had to lose the ability of scream was lost somewhere. I lost that voice of safety, and it's really important to say this a little bit further, because many times in trauma we say that we perceive danger where there is none, and where there is danger sometimes you're not able to respond because that part may have completely shut down. That scream may not be available to me anymore because of something that happened in the past, which means that even today if I want to scream, that may not be available to me. And why therefore doing trauma therapy and moving allows that stuckness to become sort of a little bit more amiable, to move, be released, be expressed, be released, whether it's through different forms of movement, like you said, whether it's yoga, dance movement therapy, people do breath work, and it's all of that that allows the body to come back into its in the moment present self, to say, okay, I can move with intention.
Okay. Great. Let me take it from there. Let me take it from there. Let me expand a little bit more on the body and the asanas and the why there's something special about yoga in that context.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will give a wider perspective to two more elements that you mentioned. You mentioned breath and mantra, and they're
Mm-hmm.
actually there is a connection between the three: nabi, breath, and mantra. Nabi being the navel. I will go into that, but let me first take it from the body and the howl and the scream that is stored and is never expressed. So yes, indeed, moving the physical body, whether it's dance, like DMT, like you mentioned, dance movement therapy, or another expression of the body, or running, sports is also very good for the body, which is a good way to discharge a lot of emotion as well, anger. If you do physical sports like running, you can let go of a lot of the fire that you are holding inside. So that's actually very healthy. But there is something about yoga that is special, and I want to put an emphasis on that. First of all, first of all, it's a little bit weird when you go to a yoga class and you see sometimes people get into these strange postures. And if you go into hatha, even more strange sometimes, the leg behind the head and, upside down. And I don't know, there's all sorts of weird things that we like to do. And you know what? When we do a strange posture, we are facing the unknown. And even within our body, because we most likely, if somebody has never done yoga, the first time they go to yoga class, almost for sure they've never been in that posture before. So it's a completely new experience for themselves. And again, when you have something new, something unknown, that's the unfamiliar, that's when the the patterns of careful fear and maybe trauma generally trigger. But if you are in a safe space and you are in a contained yoga class and everybody's doing it, and you are facing something unknown, but at the same time everybody's doing it. So you are not like the only zebra who is out of the pack. And somehow it's like, okay, I can explore this, which is completely unknown to me, but they are doing it. And by doing that, you go into an area of yourself of the unknown, but somehow feel safe because the others are around you. And maybe you feel like, oh, so this is fine. I'm within my pack of zebras. Um, but at the same time, you are exploring that aspect of yourself. What I mean by this is that you are feeling safe to explore the unknown, and this unknown that you're going to be exploring is quite particular. So, for example, we have many postures, but one will be like the lion pose. Okay, there's a lion breath. There's a kind of breath that is like a lion, and you're doing a little bit like the growl. When you were asking about the how, you were saying howling. I was thinking about the lion pose. And when we do that posture, right, the teacher says, "Do that posture." Okay, and now you see everybody doing it, and it looks so weird. First, oh, I found a group of weird people like me. That's kind of nice already, right? You feel part of a pack. Maybe I'm not part of the other zebras in my school because I was the lone kid and they were bullying me, but these guys are like me. They are weirdos. So I am happy here, right? That's first of all. Second of all, okay, I feel safe enough to explore the lion pose. And when you do that pose is designed for a specific reason. It's connecting us with the archetype of the animal. Most of the yoga postures are connected to an animal. And now you are connected to the archetype of the lion. What that means is that when you come out of the yoga class, now you're a little bit more in contact with the lion within you. And you are not just a zebra anymore. And if some situation arises in life where you have to be a lion, you've experienced being a lion and you've let the growl out when you were in the yoga class. And that's like the training for life. So when you're in life, you can call upon the lion within you. Or maybe it's the eagle pose, or maybe it's a locust, or maybe, every posture, even if it's some of them have weird names, and weird postures indeed, but they are connected to some archetypal, primal, animalistic instinct within us. And because we were disconnecting from the body, emotions, and mind, by connecting to these aspects within us which are animalistic, we are getting in tune with that part of us that is very subconscious, so that we can call upon it when we need it later on. So I think that's an incredibly valuable um, benefit that we receive from doing asanas. And that's quite particular to asanas, very different from dancing. So that's dancing is great and it's expression and it's your body and you are being creative. and that's lovely. And if you find a choreography, you are following moving energy in your body, it's great. But there is something about asanas that is a little bit different, and that's this contact with the archetypal nature of the every animalistic posture. So
Mm.
that's one of the concepts. Now the other thing I wanted to bring in is these three aspects that we talk about: nabi, breath, and mantra. And you brought it up, you mentioned it in what you were saying, and to me it's very valuable because it connects the body, the emotions, and the mind. So the
Mm.
nabi is the navel. The navi is the navel, and that's already very important. The navel is in the physical body, but you mentioned how something, the trauma triggers the part of ourselves that is the survival mode. And when we are in survival mode, the navel tightens. We
Mm.
talked about this in one episode when the clue was to make sure that the navel moves out when we inhale. That I think it was even the first one.
I think it was the
Well,
first. Yeah.
the first one, right? So the navel tends to contract. And through yoga and the breath, yeah, the breath coming later, Navi breath mantra, by being aware of what's happening with the navel, we can slowly utilize it to gather energy because many paths of energy, many channels of energy pass through the navel. So
Mm.
you gather the energy of your body and through the postures and utilize the navel in a healthy and controlled way. Now, that's first of all. Another thing is the navel is very connected to the ego as well. Sometimes we say when somebody is looking at their navel, it's like they are looking for their selfish interests. We talk about, looking for myself. And when I say myself, I mean my ego self, not my real self. So by controlling the navel through the postures, you are in a way keeping the ego in control. So that's another thing. And the other I just mentioned, there's many paths of energy that go through the navel. So if there is an imbalance within you that was stored as a result of the trauma, that we have this cellular memory, we also have an energetic memory, and some of these pathways may be blocked or may be imbalanced. And by a proper adjustment of the navel, particularly with asanas, we can help to rebalance those pathways. So that's also very important. So that's the navi connected to the physical work, connected to the movement of the body. The second element is breath, and the breath is already going to be moving the navel, yeah, because navel is connected to the diaphragm. So we are breathing and moving the navel through the postures when we are in the postures, and that breath is going to redirect the energy through the navel, and that energy is linked to the emotion because we say in yoga emotion is energy in motion, and actually energy has to be in motion. When energy gets blocked, that's when problems arise, right? Like having some deep emotion that is frustrated and is repressed and is tightened. So
That's where
moving the
trauma is.
that's what trauma is, exactly. So moving the navel and moving the breath, you're moving the energy that is associated with those traumatic emotions that are stored, and it's already helping to release it. And by being in control of your breath, you are also regulating your emotions. So, for example, you cannot be angry and breathe 4 times per minute. So if you are a person that is angry and you have a tendency to anger and you are feeling that somebody is saying something that is triggering you, if you detect it before it goes over a certain limit where there is no way back, yeah, and you start acting out whatever the reaction is happening, if you detect it, you can consciously slow down, move the navel to breathe, and slow down to 4 times per minute,
Mm.
and 4 or below. That's 4 breaths per minute. That's 15 seconds per inhale and exhale in total. It's quite low. If you notice, most of us most people during the day to day, we breathe around 15 to 20 times per minute. So if you slow down to 4, actually, in very few minutes, your emotion is coming down, and not in a way that you are repressing it, but actually you are redirecting the energy, especially if you move the navel, right?
Mm.
So there we go. Navel and breath connected to the physical body and the emotional body, and then the mantra. So if you add the mantra on top of that, which is the tip that we gave last week, how mantra is the opposite of trauma, and
Mm.
actually the definition of mantra, one definition of mantra is mind, and tra is trapping, and protecting. So it can be I protect my mind from external influences that I don't want, but it can also be me protecting from my own mind.
Mm.
So coming back to the concept from before, where we were saying that sometimes we feel that my mind is not in control. Yeah, and my thoughts are getting crazy. If you go back to your nabi, if you go back to your breath and you establish a mantra with the breath and
Mm.
with the nabi, yeah, all connected. So you're moving the nabi to breathe in the right way, out to inhale, in to exhale. And then you are regulating the breath, maybe 4 times per minute. And in that breath, you instill a mantra, then your mind and your emotions and your body all come into one and they realign. So this is like the very basic foundations from yoga to start feeling safe, because I mean, my body is not without my control. I can control my body. My emotions are calming down and they are regulated. My mind is coming back to some place, in this case, a mantra, that it can hold itself steady. Yeah, and when I'm holding myself steady to a mantra, I'm not thinking crazy thoughts. So
Mhm.
everything is coming to a safe place, and now I can face whatever unknown is happening out there.
Thank you for that explanation of how we can come back into alignment, because essentially we're talking about how trauma or emotions or a trigger that happens in our environment sort of leads to that incongruence, because I may get disassociated, I may go off into my head, um, and then, of course, the breath pattern changes. So, thank you for sharing exactly how the yogic science works on the body, mind, and on the Nabhi, and the use of mantra to actually help us come into that state of safety and alignment, which is so key, because in that moment when we're triggered, we're going back into a past trauma. We're no longer in the present. We're no longer able to see that that is no longer happening to me. This is a different situation, and I'm no longer that age, or that same dangerous situation is not present now. And it keeps us grounded in the present self.
Well,
uh,
and I'm having another idea as well as you are saying this. It keeps us grounded in our hearts as humans while being in a safe contact with our animal side and at the same time invoking some divine thing. So it's like the animal, human, and angel, right? All in one, all within our hearts. So we ground within our hearts.
yeah, and the heart center allows us to stay conscious,
Correct.
um, to what is, and aware of what is happening in this moment, which is really important, because a lot of the work we do with compassionate inquiry and trauma therapy and somatic is to work with the in the present self. How do you keep that in the present self, which is also the witness or the consciousness, as a
Right.
part of that journey to healing? Because now the witness and the consciousness is observing those parts of pain and holding space for it, without becoming it.
And that's how you change the identity from I
Absolutely.
am the victim or the perpetrator and I'm an angry person, I'm a dangerous person, for to the observer who is noticing all
And
those things happening.
which is where you come in and say, I'm the spiritual being, when you have an identity and you're connected now to your awareness, you're in the present consciousness that is able to observe this story narrative that we built when we were younger, and to disidentify, hold space for it. Yes, I took that on. Yes, that happened, but I can hold space to heal it and allow it to be expressed in a way that wasn't possible before, but me holding it as a witness to that journey of healing with safety. Now there's a person present. Before there wasn't somebody to witness it. Today there is a witness. But something else is also happening, and I know we're coming to a close and you're going to give us a tip. But to add, because I want that tip to make complete and absolute land, is that when we're doing mantra, and we're doing asanas and we're doing breath, something else is happening to the body, and that is, it is invoking and activating and developing the vagal tone with the vagus nerve, which is so important in the regulation of the body, right? So we now know with science that we have a vagus nerve that starts at the back of our ears, down through the throat, into the body. It meets with different organs that are attached, and when we are stressed, that's why we have gut issues and things when we have stress, because it's linked to the vagus nerve. And if we have trauma, it actually affects the vagus nerve and our body, the vagus nerve and the vagal tone, and our body goes into flight, fight, freeze, which is sympathetic activation, and we don't always know how to bring the body down into parasympathetic relaxation mode. And for that, we need to able to activate on command or on demand our vagus nerve to become flexible in its response. Otherwise, it's not really done that. And so when we use mantra, we're using the throat, and we're using the vagus nerve aspects in the throat. When we're doing asanas and we're moving the body, we're moving the chest. When we're doing breath and moving the nabi, we're activating and strengthening through that a lot of the vagus nerve that's eventually bringing the body into the feeling of I'm in control and I'm safe. In this perception of, okay, I can bring my body from an activated state into the state of regulation in this moment, by doing these movements and these things, so that tomorrow, when there is a trigger, I don't necessarily need to become reactive or go into a past way of behaving. Today I have the window of tolerance that's built, that allows me to have a pause between what is happening and my reaction, that allows me to hold space for response. And that's largely to do with our flexibility of the vagus nerve and building vagus tone. So that's something I learned this time when I was doing my teacher training with yoga, that's what it actually does. And that's why chanting mantra can be so therapeutic and can really like calm the body down, is because we're activating so many aspects of the nervous system. So today when you give us the tip, we are going to really keep all of these factors in mind, that is bringing us into a safe space, into the body, and activating actual parts of our nervous system, that we can actually build today on our own through these methods.
Well, I'm gonna adapt a little bit the tip I was for today to what you just said right now, because we're gonna do something for the vagus nerve, and it's gonna be nice, a nice way to activate it. And so the vagus nerve is activated just by doing a very deep breath. Is already stimulating it. The lungs and the pressure that we create in the chest cavity is already going to be stimulating the vagus nerve. But we're going to do something more specific. So the tip for today is Navi breath mantra, right? If you feel yourself in a moment when you are misaligned, when you are getting triggered and you're feeling that something is happening, that you are maybe getting out of control of your mind or your emotions or your whatever situation is arising, if you can find a place, a safe space, where you can for a moment express your body without anybody around, if you can close the office or close yourself into your room or whatever, if you can isolate yourself for a moment and put yourself in a different physical posture. So change your body, basically. If there is lots of stress or problems, or your mind is very active, even an upside down posture. And try, when we think of our problems, when we are doing something like shoulder stand, which is with the feet up and the head down, we think differently. So if you've never tried it and you are listening to this podcast, then next time your mind is worrying about some problem, put yourself upside down and try to think of the problem and see what happens. And maybe you reach a different conclusion. But basically, the tip for today is this: change the body posture, do something different. If you know some yoga, do some asanas, maybe a sun salutation or three, or at the least, like what we say, like dog pose, like the triangle pose, that we are in a triangle, upside down, and stay there for a few minutes. Now, after that, after you come out of that, if you can rest for a minute, and then here comes the breath and the mantra. Yeah, the breath should be still active while we are doing the exercise. But as you come out of the physical, of the asana, then putting both hands on the chest. And the left hand always goes first. If anybody's watching this in YouTube, my My image is reversed, but my left is the first one that goes on the chest, and then the right hand on top. Pressing a little bit, that's stimulating the vagus nerve, which Nyana was just mentioning, how it comes through the throat and down from the chest, through the chest. So you press a little bit and choose a mantra that you love and just chant it. Because that's going to, chanting mantras is already working on the breath, because to chant, you have to regulate the breath. And what I mentioned about 4 breaths per minute, if you have some long mantras, it's going to make you breathe in that pattern anyway. And the mantra is going to protect the mind. So if you feel yourself getting out of control, getting the trauma, getting triggered, or something that you feel some safe space, do some asanas, change their physical body. And then even if it's just 3 minutes, okay, 3 minutes is already enough to change the pattern. And then hands on the chest, and then chant the mantra out loud if you can. If you cannot, if you are in a place, public or in a, outside or somewhere where you cannot find your own space, then change your physical body by stretching. Just do a few stretches. Nobody will care if you stretch. You can be in a train station and just stretch yourself a little bit. The arms behind the back, a little bit, opening the chest. That's also going to stimulate the vagus nerve. And after the few stretches, hands on the chest for a moment. Or if even that you cannot do, at least do the breath and the mantra within. So breathe deeply, moving the navel and chant the mantra within the head. And that's already going to have a tremendous impact. Hopefully, you can try it and let us know.
Thank you so much for that, Ardasji. Nabhi, breath, and mantra. It activates the vagus nerve, and I think that's so. I was just thinking, maybe that's what I'm gonna do as one of the first things clients come in is shoulder stand, please. Thank you,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and that will be all. Thank you.
Uh, yeah, and the Navi breath mantra also connect to the animal, human, angel. So Navi the animal
Mm.
and breath is the human and mantra is the angel. So we recognize our three aspects and we stay human. We stay in the heart. Yeah.
Ah. And so, with that, I think there's nothing more to say than to stay in the heart with a slight pressure because that also activates the vagus nerve. And with Nabhi breath and mantra, connect to the animal, the human, and the angel. That's beautiful.
Thank you very much, Nina. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone,
so
for
much,
listening.
everyone.
Until next week.
Until next week.